We'll start with Aphorism 31, since that's where we left off. Um, Before I go into it, anybody want to share some thoughts that they have on it?
I think I'm already having a bit of a rough time of reading.
Uh
I
huh.
read a bit while we were talking, and I think I gotta grab my German volume um, to compare it. I've never read Nietzsche in English before, and I don't want to misinterpret anything.
Well, you can correct us if it's like, oh, that's totally not the right word or thought or whatever,
Yeah,
you know?
I
Yeah.
think
We're doing
German into English is
we're
really
doing the
rough,
Kaufman.
honestly.
Yeah. Generally, I mean, I've been reading Kaufman. I don't know where all uh, people are sourcing it from, but the ideas should generally still be the same, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean they're
It
pretty
looked like
much the same.
Kaufman's, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, the one that I've pulled up is Kaufman. Yeah.
Kaufman,
Okay.
I heard about him. It's like the
Yeah.
American guy.
Yeah. Yeah. But he is also known for like not. He's pretty good, but he also makes Nietzsche more palatable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean he had part of his mission was to revivify the image of Nietzsche after the Nazis and his sister and
Yeah.
that shit. So,
Hmm.
he had kind of a I have to tone him down a little bit in certain ways, and it kind of did distort
Yeah.
Nietzsche's image in certain ways. Like he doesn't like when Nietzsche says, "Oh, Borgia's an example of the Superman," in my opinion. It's
Yeah.
like there's a part where fucking Kaufman's like, "No, dude, that's like." He's trying to he debates against that at one point, and it's just like, well, I mean, Nietzsche says it here in this other portion because he's talking about the blonde beast and all this other shit. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. It's whatever, really. But
I hope he did a good job, like distinguishing what Nature's sister, who did like a horrible job.
yeah, I mean, he
Yeah,
he that's what he basically did. He took Nietzsche away from the Nazi like tones
Rhetoric.
and
Yeah.
everything,
like
but some of that like
subtext.
yeah, some of that though took Nietzsche out of his own context too, because he tried to like tone him down a little because it's like, oh, at the time people might have thought that was like a negative trait or an aggressive thing, that you know what I mean, but it's like really it's just like a neutral concept, but it just,
Yeah, man,
oh
like
well,
for
Yeah.
historical reasons, it's important to um keep Nietzsche the way he was. To I think he has to like you wouldn't for example the Leviathan from Thomas Hobbes. You wouldn't like what do you say in English? Like you wouldn't go and change what he wrote to make it more politically correct.
yeah, exactly. No,
Yeah,
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
He also
And
sterilized like the American version of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which is very musical in nature, and
mm,
so it has like no rhyme or rhythm to it, none of the sing-song nature as the German version. It's just some shit ass, you know what I mean?
mm,
Like the rhyme and rhythm
Yeah.
annoyed the shit out of him, and he was like, "Yo, I gotta cut this shit out because it annoys me." And it's like, ugh, dude, you just sterilize the dithyramb, It's like it's not no bueno.
mm. All right. So we'll get into Aphorism 31. He he talks about how when you're young, you haven't really learned the art of nuances, but that kind of changes over time. Um, Initially, we all kind of learn from mimicking, which is what he talks about, where the youth in itself has something of a forgery and deception. So you're mimicking and kind of learning how things work by just, you know, um, being like others
Fake it till
and
you make it.
fake it till you make it. Yeah. And, but then long afterwards, like you start hating this kind of these masks that you wore, and then after a while you realize that that itself was just being young, um did not to dislike having to wear these masks, I guess.
Well, it's
Uh,
just like Nietzsche's earlier writings, you know. He said like Birth of Tragedy was poorly written, but he ends up pretty much saying the same things in Birth of Tragedy just later on, but he just takes
mhm,
the metaphysical and
mhm,
Hegelian nature of them. Like he just
mhm,
kind of takes that out of the whole picture, you know, and
mhm,
just puts it in terms of will to power rather than in terms of like this metaphysics of becoming.
mhm.
You know, it's like what you guys were saying earlier, how there's different passages on certain things, but it's like the later versions get more and more refined, you know, because it kind of like spreads out into different perspectives of different things and how they just cross through different volumes because it's like the higher grows out of the lower in this case.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that also, it's nothing against ourselves when you have to like kind of learn through mimicry and like fit with the herd in a way, right? You kind of have to know how things work, and you have to kind of flow with how things are, and then once you're able to look at yourself, you might despise who you've become, just deceiving yourself to be somebody who you're not, just wearing all kinds of masks that are more acceptable for society. um, yeah, but then you come to see that all as in a way necessary as well. You kind of get where you need to. Anything more to share about this aphorism? If not, we'll move along to aphorism 32. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in this aphorism because he talks about how previously there was this thought that the outcome determined whether the action was right or wrong, and and let me see, and then it later switched to the intention is what matters. That is, what you thought about it is what matters. And then Nietzsche points out, shouldn't we instead focus on what is unintentional instead, and think of whatever is conscious as whatever you've rationalized as the cause of why you did something is surface level in a way. Um, yeah, and that the morality that comes with like thinking of intentions is a prejudice um, in itself. Yeah, this I don't know where it all ends in the end. In a way, with Nietzsche's thought of um, like who is there is no cause, I guess. So everything is sort of happening. So you can't really, look at the results and say that the results are what matters, or look at the cause and say that the cause is what mattered, um, because it's kind of flowing in and out of its history into the future. Which is, I was listening to the Nietzsche podcast, and he talked about this idea of like the societal implications of something like this kind of thought is like, so how do you blame a criminal, for example, for the actions that they have taken, right? Like what they ended up doing, is it their fault? And it doesn't matter what they intended to do. Is that a pointless thing to talk about, right? Because with the Christian morality, we always look at like, okay, if a criminal accidentally murdered someone, killed someone, he might have a less severe punishment than he whether he pre-planned to kill someone. That's a much harsher punishment because he intended on this being the result. And so Nietzsche's what Nietzsche's point here is like, doesn't matter what the intention isn't are the unconscious processes more important? And also, if my own thought is like, if everything comes from something else and none of these are causes, then how do you blame any criminal, right? It's just their upbringing or their the social support or lack thereof that they had, that made them walk down this path. What are your thoughts? Anything to share about that?
Not particularly at the moment, just because right now I'm driving. Even like I have like a version of Beyond Good and Evil pull up where the text is easier to read than what's on the stream at the moment. But I do have a question about a specific word used in the passage. This is a word that I've concerned myself with in my own writings about Nietzsche when it came to this idea of morality. And it's the German word actually that he uses, that he uses only sparingly, and he uses in a very specific context. And that's what's translated as extra moral here. It's also translated as non-moral. In the essay on Truth and Lies, that word is also used. And the German word I'm concerned with for my question is außermoralischen. And I thought I might take a moment since I just it's außermoralischen.
I think you have to type it in the chat because I can't really recognize it. I'm sorry.
Do you know?
It's an old German word. It's not very used too much anymore.
Is it used in this aphorism?
Yeah. So it's translated as extramoral in my copy. It might be non-moral in Kaufman's words. Like I said, Spice, I'm driving right now, so I can't type. And I do. I probably have something to say about
AUSSER.
Yeah, and I think in some German texts, like they use that fancy S that basically just means a double S. I think they actually
you mean
call that.
außermoralisch, right?
Yeah, it's außermoralisch.
Kind of
I
like
think it's moralischen.
Like it literally means like out of moral or like outside of moral.
Yeah, but what concerns me about that word, and thank you for the clarification. At least I sometimes get slightly different explanations from my German folk that I'm aware of or I'm friends with. But it's different than other words that he uses, which makes me think that there's a certain meaning to how'd you say it again?
I said like out of moral or like outside of moral.
Oh no, the German pronunciation. How do you say the word?
Außermoralisch. Das Außermoralische.
Moralisch. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very well.
But that there are other words that he uses with the base word of moralisch that would make me think that außermoralisch has a very specific meaning for Nietzsche. That it's not like außermoralisch ist nicht immoralisch.
Yeah, I understand it. I think I understand what you're talking about.
Because he talks about immorality and being the immoral, and he's talking about something different than außermoralisch. And I don't think I've ever encountered any scholar talk about this difference. I even brought it up to that professor one time, and I think he would give me a different answer now. But I brought it up to him, and he's like, "Oh, I think it's just like a use of a synonym. Like it's just like a slightly different way to say immoralisch." And I'm just like, No, it's not. It's clearly not. Like I almost wanted to shake him. That it's clearly being used differently, and I would want to know what people think is being meant by that word here.
Yeah, I see. He also used like formoralisch, um, meaning something completely different. Um, I don't want to say that you're wrong. I think you're making a good point. And I think it takes a lot of experience with the German language to really explore that field. I think it's hard to generally say that just treating it as a synonym isn't technically right. I mean, like it plays a lot with like an image. Like with metaphysical also plays with a certain image we have when we say like physical and whatever matter means. And I think literally I would say außer literally just means like a meta, like the Latin word meta. And not necessarily unmoralisch or not not moral or whatever way you put it.
I would have, my take would be that he's thinking that shouldn't we think of this outside of the box of morality, because he follows that sentence by saying, after all, today we moralists have the suspicion that the decisive value of action lies precisely in what's unintentional about it. So we're basically saying that we're getting, like, in a way, caught in this conversation about what is moral and what's not moral when it's beyond that kind of thing, or it's outside of even that. That's how.
And it is that one instance that makes me give any possible credence to what my professor had said at that time. That like he says it's almost as if he were to say that those who believe in the immoralist position or immoralist philosophy, that quote unquote immoralists um, uh, would value or would promote, uh, is more amicable or more open to this idea of concepts being outside of morality, that outside of an a moral interpretation. For elsewhere, he does speak about like, okay, well, there are these things that people think exist called moral facts, and for Nietzsche they don't exist, that they're just moral interpretations of facts that exist. um, I'm one to take that anti realism as well. And then that would be my question though, is like, okay, well, what is it about something that's outside of or otherwise than morality that would lean into an immoralist position, but not necessarily pertain to morality or any sort of moralism? I think that's the best. Here, I've just parked so I can kind of read. But that's like kind of like the best sort of comparison I could see is ironically against this use of immoralism in the following thought. I'll take a moment to read some of the passage while you guys chat.
I mean, in the bottom here, he also mentions overcoming of morality in a certain sense, even the self overcoming of morality, and says that has been the name for his long secret work that has been saved for the finest and most honest, and all that. So it's almost like seeing past the morality arguments.
Right.
That's how I read into it.
It's very reminiscent of the we sail right over morality.
Yeah.
Okay. Would be
Well, we could
distinguished
say it like
negatively.
this. We could say it like this. Nietzsche's an immoralist, but maybe he sees extra moral phenomenon. You see what I'm saying? Not immoral phenomena, but he sees extra moral phenomenon. Not, you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that.
So the way you use the wording, like the immoralist, like it says here, might we not be standing at the threshold of a period? So this period of time is extra moral. You see what I'm saying? It's like they're seeing beyond the threshold of morality. The immoralists are seeing beyond the threshold of morality into this extra moral era, basically, if that makes sense. That's outside of the
think, yeah, that the extra is like the negative side of what positively in the previous age was a moral because that's the other thing. So like there's this period that he already lays out elsewhere, and I can't remember where it is exactly. I don't know if it's in Beyond Good and Evil or some other aphorism or passage in a different work. But he talks about these three periods. There's the non, it's like the pre-moral period, the moral period, and then he does use,
let me pull it up. I already,
House of Moralish again. Yeah?
well, I'm not sure if it's the same one, but in Ecce Homo, like he talks specifically about how everything before birth of or beyond good and evil was actually part of his yay saying years, and everything at beyond good and evil and afterwards is part of his negative years, basically.
I mean, he brings up pre-moral in this aphorism itself. Earlier in the aphorism. I mean, we can delve more into this because there might be a lot to go into with regards to what he considers pre-moral. And but I think it's tied to what the aphorism is saying, which is that pre-moral is the period where you would look at the results and say that that's what determines the value, just looking at the results. And extra moral being like, seeing past either, where the value is. He's either at the end, at the outcomes, or at the cause. And
Beyond Good and Evil, a prelude to the philosophy of the future, that extra moral future that he's
exactly
fragments of the future that he foresees.
So
I got a post, or I got a
it is this
quote
one
coming up.
I just want to say that außer moralisch, and extra moral is like the perfect, the ideal translation of the word.
Okay.
What is outside mean there? Is that extra as well, or
it means extra? Extra is like the perfect translation.
Outer.
Okay.
Outer is like the direct like English translation, but extra probably is the best. There's some people have translated it as non, and some people have translated it as extra or as ultra. But
extra
I don't think ultra or non. Yeah, extra is probably the best prefix.
I kind of see it as like something beyond, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like out, like they were saying, outside of, beyond, extra.
Yeah, that's very well.
Too, or whatever, you know what I mean?
In addition, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
no, thank you guys.
The German word for alien, for example, is Außerirdische, and it basically means like alien. Like alien is similar to extra or extraterrestrial, for example. Also means like alien,
Yeah, there you go.
But
that's a great way to describe that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll probably need to delve more into that, but we can do that in book discussions because it probably ties a lot of his like thoughts together in terms of where he sees where he himself thinks that we should look at in terms of value or
Right.
cause. Okay,
'Cause
so
sorry, we can go ahead.
go ahead, share what you wanted to.
Just a tail end thought here is that I've constantly been almost trying to make a philosophy out of these different uses of prefixes in the German language, but just to understand what außer means in this context gives us a painted picture that sometimes might have been accidentally confused or mixed into not the prefix itself, but just like mixed into this idea of Uber and Ubermensch. It's like what by definition and what philosophically is implied when we say over or to or across, with the word Ubermensch and the prefix Uber, that is or is not implied if we were to also say something like Außermensch. That
Good
that
question.
a lot of
Well,
philosophy when
like
talking
I was
about
saying
overman
earlier, there's a part
been
where Nietzsche actually specifies that the beyond came from the feeling of inspiration that you get where I get this idea out of nowhere, and then man attributes it to God or the Ubermensch, like that, like in Beyond or in Gay Science 143, I believe, the greatest utility of polytheism. That's what he's talking about there. It was very like man gets this inspiration and this feeling of superabundance, but he gets this, inspiration out of nowhere, and he's like, "Yo, not I. This instrumentality, or as a god through my instrumentality, gave me this idea," and they feel this idea, or they get all this superabundance of power, this superabundance of like just energy, because they had this inspiration out of nowhere and they have this new insight on all this new shit. It just, I mean, he talks about it in several places, like in Ecce Homo, and Thus Spoke Zarathustra, the section on there, 62, and Dawn on the origins of morality or origins of religion, then 143 Gay Science, and a couple other places before that. I had to look them up again, but like, so you're right there. Like this feeling of the beyond and the Ubermensch or whatever do have some sort of connection. So I'm not sure how much you want to look into that, but I mean,
right.
I think you
Well,
got something going there.
yeah, just exactly this, that there may be differences that we could attach to this idea of overman or not, that end up getting used or not in the scholarship, that seems similar to this idea of außer and außermoralisch, and or dissimilar, and that it shouldn't be compared. I'll look at those selections that you brought up.
I am curious to see how it is different in the German language itself. Like, what are they interchangeable synonyms, or are they like something distinct about using Uber versus the other word?
That's very distinct. If we're talking about Uber and Außer, those are like completely different words.
Yeah,
Okay.
one's like you're
And
saying, one's over, and one's just like, yo, I'm outside the box,
that is correct. I would agree with that. While I say Außer is a very typical proposition. Wait, is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like place. Relation. Well, it can also be a preposition. It rather relates to something in hierarchy. You could say like something is über.
It's always some sort of superior value, right? Like,
yeah, Übermensch is
Hierarchy.
Uber alles, Uber whatever the fuck. Uber is just that. It's kind of like the Greek's word for
better,
euprotein
like
or
better.
aristeuin.
I would say like just better. And Superman is already a bit of an odd, but like a good translation.
Hmm.
I don't think like Außermensch wouldn't make any sense. It would mean like a man, a human
It'd be like
outside
a
of it or
hermit.
something.
That's like a hermit, really. The Außermensch would
Nah,
be.
it would honestly sound like something alien, like
Okay,
someone
I
is
got
like
you. I
no
got you.
human.
It's like
Mhm.
outside of man completely.
Yeah, and I don't like the word Uber because it's not very common to me.
Mm.
People say it like as a perfect translation to Übermensch. You pronounce it like Ü, not U. And I don't think it's a perfect translation. I
Okay.
think super is a very good translation.
Okay.
Oh, really? No. So just so you know, like the current like consensus is Overman.
Well,
Over is
super.
already
I
all
mean,
right.
yeah.
Über literally most commonly means over. Like over the
Mhm.
table. Über dem Tisch is the basic,
Super
like
in the
basically the
superior sense is what it's trying to, super rather than sub. There's sub and then there's
above.
super.
It can also mean like above.
Mhm. All right, we'll go into aphorism 33. Here he talks about how, like, whenever people speak about the greater good, these are words of seduction and should be questioned mercilessly in a way. Because, when you say it's for the greater good, you're trying to make it seem as if it's devoid of all, interest, that it's not for myself. Um, Yeah, so whenever someone tries to claim that it's not for themselves and that it's for the greater good, you have to question that.
Yeah, I mean, just don't be suckered into the idea of the person just being. I mean, a lot of politicians are like, "Oh, for the greater good, we're gonna do X, Y, Z," and
Yeah,
people just like, "Okay."
he's just an altruistic man, like he
Yeah,
doesn't want
exactly.
anything in it for himself. It's just for the greater good. He wants to see a better world, kind of thing. Anything to add to that?
I think that one's a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go into 34. Um, So Nietzsche kind of goes into how no matter what belief you hold, you can be sure that the error in it is the only thing that we can firmly believe. And if we believe that our perceptions are falsely inferred, then shouldn't we also be suspicious of thinking as the biggest hoax? Because we know that our brain makes assumptions of color and objects and all these things, and it's all an estimate, and they're not actually exactly the way that we perceive them. So shouldn't we be suspicious of the thinking that stems from it? Um, and some might think that this is bad character to be suspicious of everything, but a philosopher is nothing other. Philosopher has nothing other than the right to this bad character, because he has been fooled the most. Um, and then Nietzsche goes on to talk about how there would be no life if it wasn't for estimates and appearances, and even if you could get rid of those falsifications, then there would be nothing left of truth either. And what if it's all fiction and there is no truth? Then who wrote it? Maybe the question about the writer itself belongs to fiction. And shouldn't all philosophers aim to rise above fiction and grammar of the household teacher? Yeah. This is,
Basically, with the respect to governesses and like renouncing the faith in grammar, he's basically just saying renouncing the faith in, like, it's okay to talk in the whole unity and being aspect, but it's like, don't think, and like, you know what I mean? Because he always says like the whole like entertaining a thought in a certain way is one thing, but thinking in a different way isn't, like, it's the higher mind thinks in multiplicity and becoming rather than in terms of unity and being and whatever.
So that's like to say that things are not like true or false, but they're gradations of seemingness.
Well,
And that's
yeah, like, well, it goes along with Zeno's paradox, right? Because it's like, and this the sacred simplicity that he speaks about in Aphorism 24, because it's like, if we continue to speak about the gradations of, the things in themselves, and there's going to be too much shit to describe about the thing in themselves rather than just speaking of the thing in themselves. So it's like when you just speak in the gradations, it's like the action of the communication is impossible because there's an infinite amount of things to describe about just about anything. You know what I mean? Like, oh, how it's blowing in the wind or some shit. Like, you know what I mean? If you're trying to describe a flag blowing in the wind, like, how many gradations of the shapes are you going to have to go through to describe what, you know what I mean? So it's just like you say other shit that's more simplified to get the picture across.
so you don't get caught in just discussing the details rather than, like you say chair and everybody knows what you mean roughly, even though it's
Right,
not the
because there's an
same exact
infinite
chair.
amount of gradations that'll keep on going through change and multiplicity. So it's like, ooh, every
Yeah.
second it changes and changes, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
So you can entertain the thought and being in unity, but just understand that it's still in terms of multiplicity and becoming, basically.
Do you
Yeah.
mind sharing the aphorism of how like a higher man think in terms of multiplicity rather than unity and being? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
let me let me
Follow through
find
with
that
that.
one. I can't remember if it's
Yeah, you could just note it for
well,
sharing it later. I'm just curious because that sounds that's a really nice aphorism if he puts it together in one like that. Okay. Anybody else? Anything else to share? Um, One thing to look at also here is like who's the writer, right? And which is writer of the truths that you follow or whatnot. And it's an interesting take. Sometimes Nietzsche has argued elsewhere that whoever has the most power gets to kind of say what truth is, right? And so that I would think of that person as the writer, someone who is able to um, tell his story of truth as being the most consistent, the being the most valid. Yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, we can move on to 35.
go for it.
Okay. Here it's a bit short. He says that it's kind of talking about the same thing. It defines it here as, let me read the bottom here. 35. he seeks the true only to do the good. Nietzsche is saying again to be suspicious of those who are just looking to, saying that they're only seeking to create a better world or do good and nothing more, that there isn't any sort of selfishness tied to it. Okay, since it's the same, I'll move along. 36. Yeah, in 36 is interesting because he talks about.
Well, this is where like the whole will to power's effect comes into play, and like
Yeah,
there is no other causality than will on will, and the whole psychic universe or whatever thing that he's proposing with will to power.
he actually
Good one.
defines thinking quite well here. For thinking is merely a relation of these drives to each other. It's almost like that's how your drives are communicating amongst themselves, and that's what thinking
Yeah,
is.
like
Really.
force interpreting other forces, and
Yeah,
just like some sort of like
you go crazy just thinking about it, but yes,
bundling of like the forces interpreting each other, and I don't know. It's yeah, you're right. Do go a little mad trying to think of it all in terms of multiplicity, and you know.
yeah, because it's different instincts of yours just communicating again a feeling, right? And trying to put that into words so that the other instincts and other drives that you have can understand. The conscious idea is basically them coming to a consensus on what you actually are aiming to do, whether you're deciding to go get a cup of water or whatnot, and which drives are at top. And of course, like you said, there's multiplicity where it constantly changes as well. So it's very very interesting to look into how defining thinking like that has as the relation between these drives. um One thing interesting, and I'm curious what do you guys think, is here it says that will, of course, can only affect will and not matter, not nerves, for example. Um, I'm not fully sure what he means here, because if he believes that everything is will to power, and that even non-living things and everything has will to power in it, then doesn't the statement that will can only affect will basically say that will can affect matter or anything, right? And what exactly is he meaning by not nerves? um I'm curious to see what the German term for that is. Is he actually referring to the human body nerves or something else?
I've been ruminating on this a lot lately, and let me try to find a way to put it into words what I feel on it right now, I guess. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Um,
I don't know if I could like put it coherently, but I think it has to do with the like not being able to separate the object and the sensing.
Mm-hmm. It's a world of
And
affects. Yeah.
yeah, and like so only, like can only affect like. So our side of it is the sensing and trying to say that we could affect the object without any sensing is not possible because the two are tied together. But yeah, again, I'm having a hard time describing what I'm thinking coherently.
it's like force configures matter, but it's like forces only act upon each other. You see what I'm saying? It's like force just happens to configure matter in certain ways. Like energy is what he energy the and 619 will to power, the triumphant concept of energy is he says will to power is the inner character of energy. So it's like
But I don't
will
understand
on
this.
will is anything that has like, has force. Like matter is just configured by force. Like you know, it's basically more of a quantum look on physics prior to quantum physics, like even on that in that sort of way, because in like quantum physics, it's like you don't have these like the subatomic particles. That's just like all that just boils down to is just like force, at
Yeah.
a certain point, and all those forces are what configure the matter into certain shapes and configurations. You know what I mean? Like sodium and chloride get reconfigured into sodium chloride, your table salt or whatever, just by different force elements configuring together. You know what I mean? So
This was
and,
way before, E is equal to MC square, where we realized that
yeah,
everything is
basically.
energy, right? So Nietzsche maybe not, I mean, even though he realized that, all things have will to power or whatnot, he perhaps wasn't thinking in the same sense because,
Well, energy was still a triumphant concept at that time, at 1850s or whatever, because he literally says the triumphant concept energy in science, blah blah blah, for 619. So it's a triumphant concept in the scientific world at that point in time, even. So it just
not recognized in
Einstein
the
figures
same.
out the actual equation to
Yeah.
deliver energy. You know what I mean?
But I don't think
For
they've
energy.
I don't think they fully realize that matter is also energy. And that's what kind of makes this confusing of an aphorism because he says that if will is force and
Well,
will is
matter
energy.
contains energy, but I don't know if it's actually energy. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's not matter times the speed of light. It's mass times the speed of light, which isn't always exactly the same thing as matter. Mass and because you can have mass without actually having matter. I think, right?
I'll have to think more about the difference between mass and matter. Um, but even here, when he says not nerves, for example, nerves are that doesn't make much sense because you definitely
And
can will and change how your nerves fire, for example, right? So it's just kind of not fully getting what he's meaning there because you
could you
intend to lift up a glass and you're using nerves to do that, and he's saying that will cannot affect nerves, right? Then that doesn't. I know
right?
that's not what he's
So,
meaning here, but not getting what he's saying.
well, let's. So,
All the energy
I
is
mean,
affecting energy, like what you actually feel and everything.
Okay, but go on,
Can we
hospice.
read it?
What'd
Oh,
you say?
okay. I was wondering if I was coming through. Could we read from starting from the middle of the paragraph? The question is in the end to the end of the paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to, and then part of me wants to bring up some science, but I wanted to just make sure I understood what Nietzsche said and didn't say in that paragraph.
Okay. Maybe he means that.
I could
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want me to actually read it out? Is that what you're saying?
but yeah.
From what in the end?
The question is in the end whether to the end of the paragraph.
Okay. In the end, not only is it permitted to make this experiment, the conscience of
Oh,
method.
no. No, in the middle of that paragraph, that start from the question is in the end whether we really recognize the will.
Okay. The question is in the end whether we really recognize the will as efficient, whether we believe in the causality of the will. If we do, and at bottom our faith is in this is nothing less than our faith in causality itself, then we have to make the experiment of positing the causality of the will hypothetically as the only one. Will, of course, can affect only will and not matter, not nerves, for example. In short, one has to risk the hypothesis whether will does not affect will wherever effects are recognized, and whether all mechanical occurrences are not insofar as a force is active in them, will force effects of the will.
Okay, so he's running with the possible hypothesis that that it's at bottom. It that where is it? He says, then we have to make the experiment of positing the causality of the will as the only one. But like, and then he runs with that possibility. So when we're trying to like understand what he means by the fact that like it's that will can only affect will and not matter or nerves, he's running with a hypothetical concern. He's not saying that's the case for will to power, but that if you want to ride with this idea of causality and understand causality in some capacity, then what you have to do intellectually is you have to say, okay, well then we have to be concerned with what it affects, and that it would only affect insofar as like will to power is his thesis, that will only affects other wills. That if we want to say that will to power is some sort of like underlying like what would you call it, like underlying logic of force, like so let's say that matter, nerves, all this stuff, and insofar as they are instantiations of how energy works, like energy works in a very specific way at different scales, and that if you were to scale out what that method is to what force is, that like as an equation, no matter what scale it's at, it would have some sort of logic about it that we could say is a will to power. And that's his thesis as he defines it. And that when you're talking about causality, then, which, by the way, is as so far as like humans are concerned, is only concerned at a scale of force and of nerve function. That when you concern yourself with how things like affect at like massive scales or at like quantum scales, the functions differ, even though maybe like the will to power logic maintains itself, it changes the way that it manifests at different scales. So I think what he would be positing here, if he were to like say run with this, like, okay, I see you guys really want causality. I see that most people really want the causality of the will to still be around. And I hear Nietzsche saying now is like, I find that to be a little bit of a Kantian assumption, but that's fine. We can run with it. And then he like goes on to try to like explain what that would imply if we were to keep to that. I think that's what he's trying to say.
Any thoughts on that? I mean, so you're saying that this is more of a hypothetical than him making a statement of how he sees things.
At least, so in the last paragraph, he says, suppose finally we succeed in explaining our entire instinctive life. So he's still kind of in this mode of Versuchen, you know, that he's still in this process of just trying something out and making attempt at something. And then he says, namely, of the will to power as my proposition, it has it. And suppose all this is one problem, then one would gain the right to say all efficient force, effective force, is will to power. The world viewed from inside, the world defined and determined according to its intelligible character. This is like what I was trying to say is like the inner logic of force. That even though force manifests differently and actually mathematically from its definition would look different, if you were to look at the like say the meta of it, it would be will to power and nothing else. So that, like, let's take the concern earlier that, like, let's say my will doesn't affect matter; it just affects other other willness, other forces. That would make sense. It just it's and Nietzsche says this in a couple of places. Like, sometimes it's convenient to describe things insofar as efficient causality is concerned, because it helps, like, a layman description of phenomena. Like, it helps give a layman description of phenomena where we otherwise would just be obfuscating a point that we're trying to make, because we're, like, lacing it with a lexicon and a jargon that's not familiar to certain listeners. Yeah, like if a quantum physics professor were to be required to give a public lecture, he would have to explain everything in ways that Richard Feynman explained things as a quantum physicist, and not as someone who, like, is a quantum physicist that really likes math. Like, he wouldn't be able to explain all the interpolated equations that are required to do quantum physics, because it would be lost on those ears. He would have to explain things in a way that describes some sort of unequivocal, like, force that changes its character depending on certain interactions at the quantum level, but is fundamentally still the same. And I think that's what he's trying to do, is that, like, technically we're not acting on matter, and that our nerve stimulus, and here's some of the science, that we technically don't have free will according to nerve stimulation and neuroscience. Like, that, like, some sort of, like, action potential happens, then the nerves react, and then our idea to enact that action happens after that. That our thought of enacting our free will is post hoc the actionable thing anyhow. That, go figure, it as far as we can give it any sort of definitional causality, like efficient cause, it's because of some sort of environmental outside factor that enacted the action potential within our bodily faculties to make an action, which we then think is something that our free will did. But it's time-wise, it happens so quickly. It's like less than a second difference between our rationalizing it and the nerve stimulus before that action.
Well,
Another way
I dropped
go ahead.
658 and From Will to Power into the book discussions channel,
Okay.
but
Okay.
specifies a little bit more there on what Nietzsche thinks. But I mean, it's still, there is no other causality than that of will to will.
So this is something I
explained mechanically. You see, causality in the regular sense is a mechanistic function. The causality that he's speaking of is in terms of will to power rather than the mechanistic function. And you see what I'm saying? So
yeah. I was rereading it, and I was kind of connecting it the way you both were kind of saying, which is that when you look at, like, me moving an object, it's not that my will is changing matter. It's that my will is having an effect on the will of that object, right? And so it's a force acting on a force rather than force acting on quote unquote matter or nerves or anything. It's the effect of
right.
energy.
I mean, they're still
on other
involved,
energies.
they're still involved.
Yeah.
It's just
He's seeing it strictly
will,
as energy influencing other energies rather than energy influencing matter or energy influencing nerves. Like, mechanistically, it's not
right,
mechanical
in terms of
changes.
causality, like
Yeah, it's energy influencing energy. I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah. No, and that causality is this sort of post hoc explanation of the mechanisms involved.
Yeah.
And that it would just be like, okay, so you want a timeline of this force affecting force, this will affecting will? I can give you that in mechanical terms. Here's what happens.
Yeah, and not only that, when you explain it in mechanical terms, you also smuggle in the metaphysics of grammar psychology, which
Mhm.
also posits causa sui. I think we went over that in one of the earlier ones that we went over here, actually, and I think it might be like 28 or something, or 20. I don't know.
Mhm.
I'd have to pull it back up, but it's like, let me find it real quick.
Now, I think it's funny that maybe Aristotle shouldn't have named his work after the physics, metaphysics, but like what would be instead of meta would because that's the thing is that like that's where we get the word metaphysics from, is that it's the work after the physics. So we've called it metaphysics, but maybe it should be called post physics or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, but I think I got some clarification talking it out with you guys because I've read this aphorism multiple times and it never really fully made sense. Because I'm like, obviously you can move an object. Obviously you control the
Yeah,
magnetic.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, but it's just like in the whole causality sense, it just like that's what I've been trying to argue with fucking Simon for the past however the fuck long. It's like, bro, the mechanism. It's like Nietzsche says somewhere in Will to Powers that in term like you can use causality in terms of will to power without scrapping the mechanistic explanation of the universe. It just
Oh
you
my
know
God,
it's just
that's so funny.
mechanistic. Go on.
Sorry, no, sorry, I interrupted. This was going to be an interruption for sure.
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, I wasn't really getting anywhere anyways, so it was kind of
Well,
off topic.
I was looking up this Simon guy, and his name, I'm assuming this the same person. This Simon guy, his name in the server is Simon Dash Mechanism First.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's why I just laugh at it because it's like, bro, like your whole like he's like, oh, well, he's stuck in the whole grammar psychology of things, and he doesn't even give a shit about Nietzsche's like works anyways. He just tries. I don't know. He's just here to talk and make friends with people, I guess, but. It's just
I
like
mean,
he doesn't even understand what Nietzsche's talking about, but he's like, "Oh, well, Nietzsche's trying to deny the whole mechanistic interpretation of the." It's like, no, dude. He literally says that his way just is a slight modification that gets rid of things like smuggling in causa sui metaphysics from grammar
It's not
psychology.
even. It's like a clarification. Like
Because
he doesn't
if you
like
think of
like the
cause and effect
mechanistic
in terms of
explanation goes.
well, if you think of cause and effect in terms of the mechanistic sense, you always have a doer doing. So there's always going to be some doer that's doing first, rather than
mm,
just having these wills that interact and interpret each other. It's always going to be the doer doing. So where's the prima causa, the original cause, the causa sui that causes itself to be the first fucking cause? And science
Right.
right now, it smuggles in the the fucking God, not or perspective as cause. 15. Um,
Right. Right. Oh, hey, by the way,
Consequently,
can
the
I give the
external world is
trusted
not the
role?
work of our organs. That one.
mhm.
Oh, where's um, to study physiology with a clear conscience, blah blah blah, that the sense organs are not a phenomenon in the sense of idealistic philosophy, and they certainly could not be a cause! Exclamation mark. But that's number 15 of Beyond Good and Evil, and he talks about that
Okay.
and like naturalism in philosophy in Twilight as well, but it's just more depth. Anyways,
I mean, we'll have to talk more about that as well because if Nietzsche thinks that it does the does looking at the world in terms of energy influencing other energy wills affecting other wills, it still does it still answer the first cause question, right? Or as energy always existed, and then what caused the
well, see,
change?
that's the thing. I think it is. It's like it's. I think he argues like, yeah, it's always existed. It's not that there's always, that there's been a cause for the creation of the universe. Like the universe doesn't have its own self-cause type deal. You know what I mean? It's just
Hmm.
because he thinks Kaosusui is fundamentally absurd. So anything that causes itself would be absurd. So it would just have to be the stuff that, and not only that, if we consider like the Big Bang or something, like the Big Bang, all the forces were still down there in the fucking centralized nugget before it expanded. It was just condensed. So it was still just this
Right.
huge
So I have
fucking
a
massive force that was already there. It already existed before it expanded
Energy
out.
already existed.
Yeah.
Something caused a chain reaction of, but that is the cause, I would think. But I don't know. I mean, nobody knows. I guess. Like,
wouldn't
why
mind talking
energy
about
exists.
that after the chat.
Yeah,
For sure.
yeah, we'll have to go more into it. Okay, so let's move on to Aphorism 37, which is also tiny. Here he talks about. Well, I don't think I wrote much on this. Anything to really add to this? I mean, we can really read this. It's one sentence. Well, two sentences.
What's the German word that's used for vulgar here in both sentences? He says that, what, at least my version says, what does not that mean in popular language? God is disproved, but not the devil. And then at the end, and who the devil also compels you to speak popularly. What is that word that's used in the German? Is it the same word?
Is it Teufel?
What?
Yeah.
Aphorism
Do you have your
37.
German in front of you? The Aphorism 37?
Yeah, I have.
So what's
What?
the German word for vulgar?
Let me. I have to look on the stream. With the
Yeah,
vulgar. It's 37.
37. Yeah, you
Uh,
can look at the stream.
Populär. It's a bit tricky.
And then at the end,
yes,
is it also populär?
It's vulgar here and vulgar at the bottom.
Yes, it's both populär, and it means basically vulgar.
Thank you.
It's basically vulgar.
Okay.
Wait. Are you saying
Why do you ask?
popular and vulgar? You said popular and vulgar?
The German word populär is not popular in English. Translates to
No, what I like about that is like it's like the whole Greek word for average, which is mean. The mean is the average because the average person is mob basically. So the popular person, the normal person is vulgar. They're mob basically.
Is that really so? Is the German word popular the source of the English word popular?
Well, I don't know if I think there may have been a
So
I'll have to look
what's
that up.
can you spell the German word? Can you spell it somewhere?
Popular, and the A is a German A with like the two dots above it.
Okay, a little umlaut.
And I can do a little bit of etymology. I can try, but I think populär
think villa and villain.
is basically popular in English. It's the same word, but in this context, it's more used as a derogatory or a pejorative term to say something is in like a vulgar or a peasantry way, like
plebeian.
Like plebeian. Yeah, very well.
Yeah, so vulgar isn't a bad translation because they're talking about like the folk. They're talking about folk.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do love when that happens though, like, oh, popular, and then it's like the shit version of it, you know what I mean? It's like Oh, that's interesting because it's
Let's
like with the
Hey, look,
concept of noble and
I
villain.
love this quote from Nietzsche, Viserys, and I think that I'm jumping on you because it's
Oh no,
just
go.
like an inclination that we have about this way of thinking. Because I maybe think derogatorily about this point of view, but let's not undermine the privileges of the weak here. If I wanted to retort with a similar attitude, because it's not shit. It's just like the commoner's way of understanding things, which honestly Nietzsche says in multiple places that we shouldn't like socialists undermine this thinking in the commoner's way of thinking, that it shouldn't be something that we denigrate because it
Like
basically
I
it
was just
undermines the working instincts.
I was getting a quick expose of just saying it really quick before I was going off to do something else. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay. All right. Fair. But I
I
guess
don't
I
understand
don't like
anything
how
with
it
that
comes.
aphorism, by the way.
Huh?
Sorry.
What?
I didn't want to jump in. You can keep talking. I said I don't understand anything of that aphorism, by the way.
This
Like,
is I mean, I don't think it's a very important one, but yeah,
maybe
like
someone can explain it.
he's let me see one more second.
well, I guess there's a phrase, God is disproved, but not the devil. But I haven't really looked into the phrase.
Well, he's basically saying that like it's isn't this a little bit like like belittling to the idea that God is here to guide us and direct us, and that what you just said in aphorism 36, Nietzsche like disproves God but not the devil. Like he imagines like this hypothetical where like a commoner be like, hey, doesn't this disapprove of or uh disprove the presence of God and not the devil? And then he's saying like the
Well,
devil
people still blame
equally
shit on the devil,
influences your
probably.
way of thinking. Huh?
Yeah, but I mean, people were still probably also like, oh, the devil, this or that. But it's like, oh, well, faith in God already died, so why is there still faith in the devil or whatever? You know what I mean? Like some sort of primitive superstition that's still in effect going on.
So it
Well, it's
directly relates to the last aphorism because I didn't read the last aphorism. I was on the toilet.
yeah. So he basically, the way that the last aphorism like lays itself out is that, okay, here's this unifying force that doesn't require God, but he doesn't say that, but like this one unifying force, and then so he imagines that popular people will be like, well, doesn't this like prove that God doesn't exist, but not the devil? Like, and then but like he goes on to say that if that's the case, you should consider how like the ability for you to speak on this in the way that you're thinking about it is also the devil's like responsibility.
Hmm.
Like
Uh,
like your ability to speak on this is also something that the devil was made capable for you to do.
Hmm. That makes
the
that sounds
devil
good.
forces you to speak in a vulgar or
If there is no
Yeah,
God,
like
as per your argument, then who's making you speak like this about this topic, right? If there is only devil.
yeah, like your ability to morally question what I just said, like not only would it would not only like conclude that it was the devil that like allowed you to think in such a vulgar way,
Hmm.
popular way, but that it, this ability to have one unifying force probably is equally caused by a sort of devilish inclination as it is by a godly inclination. So if it were to be gone, then it would make sense that both would be probably gone as well. But that
Mhm.
your ability to comment on this, like that, to speak in vulgar terms, like personally, I was just thinking of like, okay, well, the you eating from the tree of knowledge allows the devil to sneak into your life. So your ability to question the morality of this and the unequivocal force that is the will to power, that's because of the devil.
But isn't he already
Adam and Eve ate from
acknowledging
the
that
tree of knowledge. Huh?
But it's like the quote in the quotations already acknowledging the existence of the devil.
Yeah, so he's pretending to be one of these vulgar people in the quotations, like like a commoner.
Yeah.
Anything more to discuss about 37?
No, I think we're fine.
Okay, so we'll go into 38.
Like yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think we're fine.
You could share if you want to talk anything more about it, or we could continue it in discussions as always too. If not, yeah, we'll do 38. So here
I
you
think
talk.
I'll just read it myself later again.
Yeah, but yeah, we could continue on talking about it too, because I think there are many ways to look at it. Okay, but 38, people passionately interpret things according to their own way of looking at things, but they misunderstand the whole thing to make it more tolerable to look at. So in a way, people reduce things down in terms that are more acceptable to them.
Yeah, he talks about this again, and I think 192, where he's talking about how the Germans came up with the word for the crossbow or whatever, how they confused like Arquebulister for Armbrust or whatever. But it just like they simplify things to what is familiar rather than the
What
unfamiliar.
it might be. I mean, because you always have to learn things in terms of things that you already know. You can't just know of a new concept that's
Right.
entirely removed, right, from something you have already experienced. And it's almost like when you taste something new, people always ask, like, what does it taste like?
Right.
And you kind of have to
Contrast it with
describe it.
something else.
And it's always a reduction. It's always like some way interpreted in the way that the other person can understand. And that's also interesting how now the concept of like when you truly experience something and then you have to explain it to a friend, that you basically have to explain it in a term that they would understand. And then if they had to explain it to somebody else, they would have to reduce it down further in the term of the third person could understand. And it's almost turns out to be a Chinese cell phone of like if the common person has to understand something that's really deep, it's almost impossible because they're so removed from the experience that whatever gets to them after hundreds and hundreds of people are just going to be just like nothing to do with the
Yeah, just
actual
fucking
experience.
lost in
Lost,
interpretation,
yeah. And
basically. Yeah.
this is a very important. I've been thinking about that idea recently because it's very hard to kind of tell the average person like, oh, reduce Nietzsche for me or whatnot. And like in a sense, you have to almost experience things and then connect Nietzsche's idea to like, oh, he's putting it into words for me in a sense. And so you can't always just explain it to anybody about what some of these ideas are because you have to can only reduce it to an extent before it is no longer true and it's just not
Yeah, and I
even
mean,
true
trying to
at all.
actually detail Nietzsche and any kind of like meaningful sense and his depth in such a short amount. You know, you'd have to have the skill of Nietzsche to write about Nietzsche, like, you know, how Nietzsche writes to write about Nietzsche. You'd have to have that kind of skill and explaining Nietzsche's depths, you know, it'd have to be like poetry almost, because
Yeah.
just like fucking just how much you're just gonna miss otherwise. It's just kind of
Yeah.
at some point you're just like, you're just gonna have to jump in, dude. Like, there's no other fucking way to do it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You gotta just experience that. And everybody reads it their way and relates it their way. So you can't, like, why see it through the reduced version that I'm giving you when you could go for it as
Yeah,
it's
exactly. 'Cause
already.
there's gonna be just a whole platoon of emotions and feelings that come along with, and not only that, like certain aphorisms are just going to highlight other aphorisms in your head that are different than the aphorisms they highlight for me, you know? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like
It's
you're going
just
to have different insight cascades going on with different aphorisms that all fall into place. And then once that happens with those, and you go back and read other ones and you're like, holy shit, this one makes even more sense. And then once you read those and they make more sense, you read the other ones that you just, and it's just a fucking, you know, it just keeps on giving.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know where I heard this, but there was this idea of, like, how modern day people we have kind of lost our spirituality and all this because of the same kind of issue, reasoning. Because let's say that someone actually had a spiritual experience or whatnot, and they explained it to somebody else, like, this is what I felt, and this is like how I see the world and all this stuff, and then it gets reduced down multiple times to the average person, and the average person almost looks at it being like, this is rubbish, and clearly so, because whatever they see, whatever gets to them, it is probably has nothing to do with the original experience, and so it looks like rubbish, and they can't connect to it because they never experienced anything like it themselves. And
Yeah, and
that's
a lot of times spiritualization just comes from the instincts anyway. It's like Nietzsche says, love is the spiritualization of sensualism. So it's just like, you know, that's saying a lot about how instinctual spiritualization kind of is in a way, you know. It's kind of like this, like, instead of even being able to consciously interpret it intelligibly,
Mm.
it may just be there something, you know, instinctually.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, even when you put it into words, right, you're already, even for yourself, when you're just stating it for yourself to understand, you're already reducing it down
Oh yeah,
from the
for sure, for
experience,
sure.
right? And so then it just gets worse from there, depending on how many other people have to understand what you experienced and how long it's been since the experience, all that other stuff. So that's, yeah, it's it's very hard to explain this idea, but it's very
Yeah,
important
'cause
to
I mean, it
recognize as
starts
well.
like, oh well, I got to dress it up for and the aesthetic Socratism for this guy, but you know, it's exactly that whole thing. It's giving him the aesthetic Socratist version, the sterilized version of
Yeah.
what it
And
stood
people will say,
for.
like, why do you think I'm not smart enough to get it? But it has nothing to do with that. It has the fact that you have to kind of experience it yourself. There's no way that you could,
It's
read.
like I can't really tell you what your instincts or how your instincts are going to interpret Nietzsche if you actually read him. You know what I mean,
Yeah,
dude?
yeah,
It's just like,
yeah, exactly. And what else did I want to share about this? Um, one second. Um, it's also interesting to look at is he says, a lot of it is lost in this noble posterity of looking at things, and we ourselves do it. And it's interesting to also look at history through this lens. Like the history that finally makes it to us. Like how much has it been altered and whatnot.
And not only that, it's like we still only maintain fractions of world history anyways when we understand it. It's like I'll understand history of these people, those people, this people, but not like the entire world, and
Mhm.
like knowing the history between a whole 30 different nations is going to give you a lot bigger detail than just knowing the history of the world and from like 3 different nations, you know what I mean, or just one national version, you know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah.
like there's a whole different, it depends on the circle you're involved in.
Mm.
So I don't know.
I
So
mean,
I kind of interrupted there.
that's fine. It's fine. I mean, sometimes like one of the things I recognized is like the I don't know how many people know the story about Paul Revere in Boston, riding his horse and letting Americans know about the British troops, and he was considered as a hero and all this stuff. But even there, um, the only reason his name was used was because it rhymed better in a poem, and it wasn't just him doing it; it was a bunch of people doing it. But
Yeah.
the history was changed because everybody likes seeing one hero make a big difference like this, and so they kind of changed the entire history, and that's what's taught in classes and everything is about one man made history by letting Americans know that the British are coming, but that is far from the truth. And it's just like we have reduced it down, and unless you go to those areas to learn about what actually happened, and in most cases it's lost completely because it sounds better, it's nicer the way it's rewritten historically.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's like if you go back and read Theogony by Hesiod and you get a picture of certain areas of like just like in Greek mythology and whatnot compared to what people think about them today. You know what I mean? It's like,
mm,
well, if you actually go back to the original Greek descriptions of them and think from their constellation of thought rather than your own, because that's the tricky thing is reification. Like
mm,
we always try to reify things into our own through our own lens. So you always have to be self-aware of like reification. Like it always occurs no matter what, but it's like when does it occur? And you know what I mean? You can kind of like that's why I like reading Quine is because you can kind of get a sense for he discusses when reification occurs, and it's like
mm.
af- I'll bring it up in one of in like the other philosophers section, but
Okay.
because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a completely different tangent right now.
Anything more to share? If not, we'll go into 39. All right. So, um, yeah, he talks about how knowing the harsh truth can cause one to perish. So, the strength of the spirit should be measured in terms of how much truth needs to be sweetened or falsified. And the harsh reality makes for a strong and independent philosopher. Um, he also, something I kind of read into it, and he also talks about it here, is that if you're evil and you're unhappy, you're likely to discover certain parts of the truth. If you become hard and cunning, then that's the origin of a strong philosopher spirit. And if you're good natured and lighthearted, then you get to be a scholar, kind of thing.
I'm driving again, but does he actually say that in the aphorism that that it's the how much truth needs to be sweetened or not? Where is that something that's said verbatim in the
Yes, let me see. Okay, I'm going to read it out. Indeed, it might be a basic characteristic of existence that those who would know it completely would perish. In which case, the strength of a spirit should be measured according to how much of the truth one could still barely endure, or to put it more clearly, to what degree one would require it to be thinned down, shrouded, sweetened, blunted, falsified.
Okay, so holy shit. I don't know why I didn't read this passage one time and compare it to a more notable passage about handling truth. I'm sure that we're all familiar, or maybe we're not, but there's another aphorism or quote from Nietzsche where he says that the strength of a spirit should be determined by how much truth one can handle.
Hmm.
And he leaves it off at that. I think that's the more famous quote with regards to this topic. Do
Yeah.
we know about this quote?
Yes, but actually, it even gets deeper in the opening of the Antichrist. He's like, to even understand anything within my works at all, like, one shouldn't even be asking questions about the fucking truth at all. You know what I mean? Like, the truth is just some bullshit concept anyways. Like, what is the truth really? It's a bunch of different fucking gradations. So,
I
but
wonder how much that coalesces with these two aphorisms that I'm speaking to, the one we're reading and the one I mentioned. So if you want to put that up, that I'd be curious to read that. But my epiphany seems to me is that, like, okay, well, it's to what extent an individual can handle uh, a quantity of truth, but that doesn't necessarily delimit based on this passage here, like, to what extent it needs to be sweetened or otherwise. That like that's what I really appreciate about Nietzsche's view of hierarchy, is that a very
goes
like
right
base
along with
level.
his gay science for amor fati. You know, I don't want to accuse the accusers. I'm just, you know, I'm not even gonna let my only negation be looking away, not even like saying no to, you know what I mean? I'm not even
Hmm.
gonna try to negate other people. It's just
Right. Yeah, exactly. So like that, I think that's the trouble we find with like people that take, it's probably not the most appropriate word, but like take like a very elitist perspective on what Nietzsche's philosophy prescribes or not, or those who think that Nietzsche's philosophy is uh, is wider reaching but not hierarchical. That I think both these camps tend to misunderstand that, one, it is hierarchical, that there's different strata by which one needs to or would be best to understand the will to power as, say, to take a concept of Nietzsche's, like like take a base soul, like I was gonna say, is that like a base soul probably needs a certain way of coming to the truth of what the will to power is and is not for them, or even what it is in general, but from the
absolutely,
perspective of a base
absolutely.
soul. And that it's like I was saying earlier, and I hated to cut you off because you were saying you were going to just use that this idea of shit perspective as a springboard for something else that you said
I
when
was
we were
just
talking
trying to
about that
contrast
Walden
like
quote.
poopy with, you know, like noble with, you know, high and low, basically. I was just,
Yeah,
I just grabbed a word and threw it in there real quick because I didn't want to go through, you know, whatever the
I
fuck
would,
to find the right
but
word for.
tongue in cheek, I would advise that you don't use such vulgar language. But yeah, no, I picked that up when you continued on. I just thought like, oh, well, that was kind of, you know, I mean, like, we don't know each other all too well,
Well,
but even just
I
the
was just
fact,
pressed to
I was
go do
like,
something real quick, so I was just like shit, and I just, you know, said it and took my finger off control and bounced out. Like, you know, and I bounced away from the computer real quick.
It's fine. It's fine.
But
I
no,
haven't been in
you're
the
right. I mean,
server to
I
like
do have a,
understand.
I do have a ability to be crass at times. You know what I mean? So, but
It's okay to not take our spectacles off and like kick off our shoes. I was just gonna say that I haven't been in the space long enough to like understand outside of people's like intellectual ability, like how they just casually interact in the space. I've always really appreciated being very astute, and that when I'm engaging in topics like I'm hiking up my pants, like you won't find me in a slackened moment when I'm on and that or when I'm trying to engage, and that it has its own characteristics, but that like it can be deceiving to how much I care about a topic or not, or like how serious I want to be taken from topic to topic.
no, I feel
I'm
We can
addressing
continue.
like the
We can continue
Huh?
this outside because we're
yeah,
gonna
excuse
going
me.
back to the aphorism.
Yeah, so but the interesting point is that the Nietzsche is not only saying that like to one's ability to handle truth or not, but that according to each individual, like this truth needs to be adjusted in order to accurately discern to what ability one individual can or can't handle the truth. One needs to understand their their uh, their background and like who they are as a spirit, in order to determine to what extent this truth handling is to be understood as.
well. You can also see that Nietzsche is all about like intellectual integrity to the verge of hardness, like in a manner of like truthfulness to oneself. You know what I mean? Like these are my passions, and this is how I see the world, and this is, you know what I mean? Versus like, oh, the truth of like, he's not like, don't project a dogmatic truth, but you know what I mean? Like there's like your own intellectual integrity, which is like your truth, versus like projecting dogmatic truth upon the world.
Yeah.
It's I also been trying to understand in a sense of like the people who fully understand these concepts basically perish. That whole idea where I feel like I would have considered that it's if you perish, you're kind of I don't know, kind of wrapping my own mind around it, which is I feel like overcoming it is kind of what gives you better insight into it rather than perishing. And that's my initial thought on it. I don't know what do you guys think about that, because Nietzsche sometimes tries to say that people who have actually perished understand truth more than any than the greatest philosophers, pondering about it because they have actually like seen death and experienced the whole thing, kind of. And yeah, it's also brought up in the sense here of like those who manage to see truth fully do perish from it, kind of thing.
I think that's why I've gotten over this idea of like I'm really concerned, and this is something Nietzsche says exactly, but I'm not very concerned with like when people don't understand what I'm saying or don't understand me, like, because it's just a matter of vanity with however upset or involved I get with that kind of response. And that like when I find someone or something that understands me very well, that it's well, the quotes like that I something about like those who don't understand me or those who don't understand somebody, it will hurt that person's vanity. But for those who do understand them, it hurts their heart and makes that person want to say, how is it that I end up finding someone who has had a harder time of it as I have had? That when you encounter something like an idea or someone that doesn't understand you, like it's just like a question of almost not even of a hierarchical disposition, but it's just like, okay, so you don't know my experience, so I shouldn't feel any bit but just damaged about my vanity when it comes to what it is that you're trying to say is the truth of the matter, or that you have the better over me on something. It's because it's just you don't understand my perspective, and that's something that's okay.
Nietzsche actually says somewhere, I can't remember where, but it's about judgments in particular, that all judgments about others are wrong because exactly that reason. You don't have the whole
Context, the whole picture.
experience that have led that person from childhood all the way up to adulthood to have those experiences that they're having now. You know what I mean? Like everything that's played into the plant of a person. He always talks about people as plants or whatever, but it's like we grow and we have roots and everything, and it's like those roots, those instincts, they develop over time from when we were in the embryo or in the womb to fucking, to now, basically. So
anything more to share, or okay. Actually, I do have something to share. In the bottom, where he talks about, where is it? Right here. Yeah, the thoughts on where is it? Where he talks about how the evil and the unhappy are more likely to discover certain parts of the truth, and being hard and cunning is more likely to bring out a strong philosopher spirit, and being good-natured and lighthearted makes one more of a scholar. I'm trying to see where it's mentioned in here. Yeah, here. Perhaps.
yeah, I see it. It's about midway through a little.
Yeah, right here. That's yeah. It says there's no doubt at all that evil and unhappy are more favored when it comes to discovery of certain parts of truth, and that the probability of their success here is greater. Not to speak of the evil who are happy, a species the moralists bury in silence. And perhaps hardness and cunning furnish more favorable conditions for the origin of the strong, independent spirit and philosopher than the gentle, fine, consolatory good-naturedness and art of taking things lightly, which people price and price rightly in the scholar. Nietzsche had made multiple references to being light on your feet. I wonder if he sees that almost as a trait of a scholar, just because of this aphorism.
So a funny thing, I'm just encountering a Reddit discussion that I'm having on this very topic, where someone was trying to have me to understand that my professor's like adding a Kantian gloss, as I would say it, but like this sort of like interpretation from Hill that Nietzsche's thought has foundations in Kantian thought, and that this person was taking issue with how the scholar, namely my professor, was adding like a bias to his way of to Nietzsche's way of thinking, and that it didn't provide anything. And I could take my own issue with that, but I told them on a different topic that I'd email them about this, and he says, oh, well, no, you should say it in person and see what he has to say, as if to kind of like allude to this sort of like say more risk towards like my professor like befuddling or stumbling about them being a scholar, that like the truth would come to light if he actually approached this to him in person, and that emailing him gives him time to cover up like his ability to like address these things. Like it gives him too much grace. Like it appropriates him too much grace. And I'm just like, well, I don't think you understand the cunning that a scholar to something that also not only that Nietzsche praises, but also that Nietzsche criticizes in other places. I was just I just parked. So let me see where it is that you're reading that in the aphorism real quick.
Well,
So
yeah, I mean,
are we on
he actually
39?
shits all over scholars, like he's
But
not a big
here,
fan of the term scholar.
Where's
He
where's
considers
that
them
part though that
nihilists.
you guys are talking?
the middle of
The
Aphorism
middle,
39. But he doesn't talk about the scholars as cunning here, although other places he might have. He talks about
Where
it's in the
trying to just
bottom,
find.
right here.
Okay, hold on. I gotta rotate my screen. I'm looking at
perhaps
hold on a
harshness and
second.
cunning furnish conditions more favorable for the development of strong, independent spirits and philosophers than do that gentle, refined, accommodating good nature and skill and taking things lightly. See,
Rightly prized. It says rightly prized in the learned man. Let me see what it says in yours. It says rightly.
Bradley Price in the scholar.
In the scholar. Okay, what's that German word?
Is he here?
What?
You there, Schweizer?
What? I wasn't paying
Feigl.
attention.
Feigl.
Sorry.
Do you have
Speaker.
the book
Feigelberg,
open?
were you back on the toilet again?
No, I was looking at memes. I apologize. But I'm here and I'm ready to use for translating.
So in Aphorism 39,
All right,
in the
wait.
bottom of the second paragraph,
Yeah.
he talks about the gentle, fine, conciliatory good-naturedness and art of taking things lightly, which people price rightly in a scholar. And we're curious if he uses the same word scholar or some other word in the German.
Yeah. Let me.
Good naturedness.
Oh, that's kind of hard to write. It's. But we're looking for what type of words?
scholar and German.
How far
Second-
is that off the bottom? Wait, can you scroll down a bit?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, highlight again what you're looking at, so that way he knows
highlight.
where.
Yeah. I can. Yeah. Wait.
It's the end of the second to the last sentence in that paragraph. I don't know if the paragraph is the same in the German.
Yeah, I found it. And we're looking for what word is specifically? A scholar.
The scholar?
He says Gelehrte. Das hat Billingo Gas sanfte. Yeah, gelehrt. And it's basically scholar. That's a very good translation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So and that's my point, especially considering the next sentence too. Like because he was critiquing, this Reddit guy was critiquing mainly his 2003-2005 book about Nietzsche and the Kantian foundations of his thought or something like that. I can't remember the title. And I did. I just like, I thought immediately, it's like, no, if I approached him, like, that's like the funny, weird, like cunning of a scholar is that they know like when it's wise, like outside even of a legal context, but like certainly when legal contexts get involved, this is like a strategy, like a backdoor strategy, if you will, to use some verbiage that Nietzsche would use. And I think Viserys is kind of knowing what I'm talking about when I say this.
And
That
the interesting thing about the cunning aspect is in Genealogy of Morals, the first essay, section 10, he says that the slave will always be more cunning than the noble.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So like this, like the gentle, fine, conciliatory good naturedness, that's like achieved at so much so many convictions, to use a Nietzschean word, like so many lies, but even just so many convictions about like, okay,
Yeah,
no, this
exactly.
will ascertain my green pasture happiness. This will make sure, like through so many roundabout ways of wording things. Like my professor, if I were to like address it in public, like he was like, "Oh, I'm not sure. I'll have to think about that." Like that's like the scholar's very smart, very cunning way of saying like, I don't know how to say or give a response that would not put me into a point of questionability, like namely would strip my intelligentsia like authority. So I'm going to get back to you and give you, and that's the power play that honestly, like elitists, like true elitists, like there are some scholars who are fucking imbeciles and are exactly the more majority understanding of what even Nietzsche would talk about, but that this guy was talking about with scholars, is that like they're basically idiots that like finished an like a graduate degree, which isn't all too hard. It's just a lot of work, especially in the social sciences. And then like Nietzsche is just like, we understand that like people that are hard and cunning are able, like that will to power aphorism that I shared not too long ago, 764. Like the 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 vulgar, like the common, like this attitude, really, it's not even like a strata of people anymore because of like the mixing of instincts and drives. Like this sort of like ability to cunningly get what you want um has gotten to a point that like now this majority attitude has power now and is able to use it with such craft and execution that like even the bourgeois and the intelligentsia and the elite today are able to not only be the voice of the people insofar as Vox Dei is what the Vox Populi want. Another Nietzsche quote I'm alluding to. Like they're able to like execute it like with the ability of an elite, even though like the attitude and the instincts are vulgar instincts and vulgar attitudes.
Yeah.
I mean, other part I want to mention in here is that it's sometimes not to the fact that oh, I don't want to, like the professor might not necessarily go like, oh, I don't want to say something that might implicate me, but it's also that you also, when you say a statement, it cannot be reactionary. You have to kind of consider the multiplicity of things, and
Yeah, you gotta ruminate on it a little.
you have to ruminate on it. And it is a slave trait. I will agree that we have the ability to like sit and think and all the stuff rather than just react and act, turn it into action. But that's also with the consideration of the multiplicity. So there's plus and minus, but Nietzsche also talks negatively multiple times about scholars because they also get a little too removed from the action, where
Yeah, they just become like a warehouse of knowledge, and then they die with it without creating anything.
Exactly.
They're just a scholar, and then they died.
Yeah. All right. If you're good, we'll go to the next one. Yeah, this while you were talking, Hospice, I was thinking about this aphorism, which he says that it kind of goes with the idea of, every deep thinker is afraid of being understood than being misunderstood. And he also talks about shame is hating yourself to cover up something you've enjoyed. You're muddling your own memory against the only witness, which is yourself. Someone who feels great shame has great depth and understands things that only few people can ever touch and hides it from those who are close to him. Which is a interesting take as well, of like looking at
That
what.
kind of plays into the Pale Criminal too, for the best book Zarathustra, you know.
Go ahead, expand on it. How do you see it? How do you see the connection?
Well, it's like, the Pale Criminal is all about like society sees that one action as
Defining, I guess.
as the defining moment in that person's life or whatever,
Hmm.
where it's like you have that whole multiplicity of reasons of why you acted in a certain way. And I can't remember what you were saying beforehand, but it related in some odd sense to me.
Yeah, like you.
Oh yeah, how the shame is like something you enjoyed at first, because it's
Hmm.
like, he really thirsted for he just didn't understand himself, but then he saw himself as the doer of this one deed, and it's like the paleness is your shame of yourself over enjoying that one deed,
Hmm.
and you kind of like wither away into the pale version of yourself.
Yeah, and also interesting how, like, someone who feels great shame kind of gets to these certain truths about himself, understands certain things about himself, but the shame kind of keeps you hidden from, like, you hide yourself from others, don't let in on your truths, because it's painful in a way.
Right. They're not digested.
The shame is not digested.
Yeah, and like Nietzsche always talks about, like, if you don't digest your like shame and whatnot, then it starts turning into venom. It instills venom at a certain point, and that becomes resentment, and the whole creating values out of resentment and whatnot.
It's kind of somewhat related to this concept of, in psychology, they thought, hey, when a natural disaster happens, we need the psychologists on the ground to talk to people immediately, so that they get grief counseling and all this other stuff. And they did that, and they found that everybody basically got worse because, again, they didn't get to digest it. You're basically like still feeling it, still experienced all this disaster, and then someone's like, well, talk to me about it, and you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm feeling. you know and it just, like,
They just add on to the stress rather than the
yeah.
stress going away, like, over time. It's
And
just like,
yeah,
well, tell me
yeah,
about this and that, and they're, it's now they're getting interrogated.
yeah. And a lot of it, what I realized, is unconscious processing, right? So you don't need to even sit there. You almost, like, you gotta let it kind of settle in with whatever, like, you were expecting life to be a certain way, and all of a sudden you get punched in the face. You have to kind of sit and let it settle to come to terms with things, rather than, you know like, I'm ready to go a new direction. You have to kind of sit sometimes and reflect on what happened, and it's a lot of it is unconscious, so you can't just, like, I think that's a misunderstanding in psychology, thinking that, oh yeah, you need to consciously process, but the first part is unconscious processing, and you just have to just, you know let your mind rest, and then once you're
Yeah, I mean,
ready, then you can talk
there's a
to
certain
yourself.
amount of time that'll go by, and you know, the
Yeah,
hardest thing with some sort of traumas is that they don't distance themselves over time. And that's
yeah,
kind of like the whole thing with post-traumatic stress.
yeah.
It's like,
You
you
keep
know, even
awakening it,
even
or
still, PTSD does distance itself in time, especially when you learn how to handle it in a
Hmm,
certain way, and you learn
hmm.
like markers of what's causing it and everything like that. But it's just like, it's different than something that, oh, I broke my arm or some shit, like
Hmm.
that kind of stress distances itself with time a lot easier than something that's post-traumatic or whatever.
They've been terming it chronic PTSD, which is the type of PTSD that doesn't seem to calm down, just keeps
Right.
reappearing with intensity, with the same intensity that you've been feeling it, which is also, different ways your brain is processing it, and depending on how traumatic something is. Yeah, and also very interesting how, like, in the early aphorism, he talked about how truth is often painful, and that's something that people forget. And here also he says that someone who feels great shame understands certain truths, but because of that great shame, that pain of communicating it, he keeps it to himself almost. Even though everybody he is seeking to understand truths, it's not something he can share because it is tied to his shame, his pain. Yeah.
But even still, like, there's other things that I like about this aphorism too. It's just like, everything profound loves the mask. And even even if it's not just shame, like there's always like there's always those actors of their own ideal where it's like people see these people in a certain way, and they'll lean into that mask that other people are interpreting around, that
Hmm.
grows around them, and they'll just lean into it from time to time, and like play into that mask, or not, and like it's kind of like, people will expect this of me, so I'm going to do this, and then,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Or they'll expect this of me, but I'll do the opposite to impress. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It's like someone that goes around and makes himself out to be a fop and dandy, but then
Yeah.
when push comes to shove, he's actually like, well trained, well disciplined, well knowledged, all sorts of shit, like,
Mm.
you know what I mean? So it's just like, oh, he actually had this mask, but it's like, or it's like, oh, I suck at doing everything, so I have less responsibility in the group. You know what I mean? It's like, oh,
Mm.
play like you're the weakest link, but you know what I mean?
Mm.
There's certain ways to look at this in all sorts of different angles, because it's like,
I like how he says that around every profound spirit, a mask is growing continually, owing to the constantly false,
false
namely shallow
interpretation. Yeah,
interpretation.
exactly. I love that. And that's what I was talking about, like how people lean into that shallow interpretation that people will have of them. So, like, oh, I'm going to make it such that I appear to be a fop and dandy while I'm not actually a fop and dandy, but I'll put
That's
up
how
this
people see me.
illusion, and it just plays so well into your favor because it allows you to get away with certain things that people may not suspect you of doing or whatever. You
Mm.
know what I mean? If you're trying to like set up something elaborate, people won't be like, oh, well, it's obviously this person because X, Y, you know what I mean?
Mm. They use it to your advantage,
It's like
essentially.
that one fucking movie with Kaiser Sose or whatever.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Uh,
Usual suspects.
yeah, there you go. Bam.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. On to the next one. Everybody's good. Um, aphorism 41. He talks about how you shouldn't get too attached to a person because it's a prison. And he also talks about how those who are superior and rich souls often turn even their generosity into a vice. Anything else? Yeah, those are my main takeaways from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just. I
Like you
remember
could,
the first time I had a sexual education class, and this
mm,
was like the 4th grade, but the woman was like, "Isn't it weird to say I couldn't live without you?" Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, "Yeah, that is kind of weird." You know what I mean? It's like
mm-hmm,
it's just like a logical fucking statement, and I was in the 4th grade, and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I guess that does make sense." You know what I mean? And that's
mm-hmm,
exactly what this is saying. Like, it's like don't make someone else your idol, you know what I mean? Because it's just like if you put them on the pedestal, if you put them as your supreme guiding principle, you're gonna be fucking miserable every time they step outside of that image of what you have, of what they should be, you know, that platonic concept of, oh, this is like, I hate to say it, more women are idealistic than men in this sense, you know,
mm-hmm.
like, oh, my man is XYZ and I put him on this pedestal, you know what I mean? And it's like,
Mm,
I don't, well,
yeah,
at least it used to be that way. You know, feminism's kind of changed that a bit, but, or whatever, but it's like, you know, it's like they tend to be more idealistic than men,
mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm. Yeah.
goes into some path aphorisms like in the 400 section on women and children. Great section, by the way.
I love how he talks about how one must know how to conserve oneself, the hardest test of independence. Which is tough because you want to be dependent on something and say that, this is why you know, you want to be dependent. It's kind of weird because you would always think like, who wants to be a slave to anything else? I want to be a master. And if you ask anybody, they'll say that kind of thing. Like, I don't want to be dependent. I want my freedom, my independence. But we also have a tendency, just because it's easier to make somebody else your meaning or somebody else the direct you in life and tie yourself to somebody else as the reason you do XYZ to
Yeah, I mean
keep
that's
it to
one of the
yourself
reasons
is
why I've
difficult.
always been more focused on like not like people being like I've always just found it weird like when people are like, oh, they find happiness in other people. I'm like, what? Like, I guess the one act of overcoming resistance in your life was overcoming resistance to get the girl or something. Like, and
Mm.
that's like
Yeah,
the
but
only thing
yeah,
that you require for
absolutely.
happiness or whatever. But it's just like, I don't know. It's just not for that's not my definition of happiness. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
it's just
Yeah, don't tie yourself to any one goal of like, oh, this I get this and that's done. I guess. Okay.
well,
Now, yeah, go ahead.
aphorism like 87, fettered heart, free spirit. So there is something about discipline that Nietzsche loves that sets one free. So
87, you said.
yeah, 87, but also 188, which talks about the long obedience in the same direction.
This
But
is all BGE or which
yeah,
book?
this is all BGE.
Okay.
So we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah, we will. We will. All right. The next one, 42. It's short. The main thing I got out of this is that the new species of philosophers want to remain as riddles. Um, and regardless, Nietzsche wants to coin a name for them by calling them attempters here.
Yeah, because, you know, it's something new. You're going to be the tightrope walker, and you're going to fall. bust yourself up, get stuffed in a tree.
Yeah. I
I
love
have
that it in English it kind of translates pretty well, where the term attempters also have the word tempt in it. It's just kind of what he points out here as well. I wonder what in German same thing. I think he's not. Is he? Oh, he's still here.
it's Versuchen.
What?
Versuchen.
What is it?
What word?
It's Versuchen.
Bazookan?
No,
I can't eat.
Versuchen. Versuchen.
So does it
I-
do the same thing it does in English? So I'm on aphorism 42. I'm gonna scroll down here. Nietzsche calls the new philosophers by the term attempters, and it's very interesting how the word tempt is in there, which Nietzsche says temptation, but it's kind of clever how
Yeah,
that word
the word
has
is
it.
like Versucher or something like that in German.
Ja,
Right.
Versucher.
Yeah, Versuch is what he said, and then
Versucher.
but the other one is
Versuch.
Versuching or something.
So it kind of happens to work in English, but it's also true in German, right? Because they're not
Yeah,
related.
I think Versuch.
I would translate Versucher as the tempted. Someone that is tempted.
Hmm.
Or
And
that someone that
tempters,
tries
someone who tries is what?
is Versucher.
And what about
Versucher is
temptation?
it's the same. It's the tempted one and also the one that tries. Yeah.
Hmm.
Prestige.
Okay.
But what's
This
ein
Prestige.
Versuchung?
What one after another? I don't understand you.
One of you guys.
Hello?
Speak up. I
Du
guess they're
bist
done.
Prestige.
Ein Versuchung is a temptation, so Versucher or whatever. A tempter.
Let me read the entire sentence. Vielleicht auch ein Unrecht darauf haben, als Versucher bezeichnet zu werden.
That's it. Any thoughts?
Yeah, he was asking if he was basically what he was asking was if Versuchung, ein Versuchen, had the same kind of how a tempter and a temptation, like how the words had this, they both had the same base word of tempt in them. You know what I mean? So it does the same thing in German.
But
like
I think there's a little difference, is that in the German, if I'm understanding it correctly, temptation means the guy who tried or tries, versus temptation in the English sense could mean like the I guess like it could kind of be tied to a negative thing, right? Like, oh, the temptation of eating junk food, or the temptation of wasting your time doing XYZ. It's not always in a positive sense of like tempting, is like trying something that rather than you're pulled to by your less favorable desires. Yeah.
Du bist Prestige.
I think a tempter is the correct translation in this context.
Actually, Kaufman writes about that here. Versucher could also mean tempters, which does not seem intended here, at least as the primary meaning, or experimenters, which is meant, but to spoil the triple play on words. Versuch, attempt or experiment, or Versuchung, temptation.
Versuchung.
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 I posted the two
Yeah,
different.
that's very well. You said it perfectly.
Nice. All right. Okay. I think that's
Du bist
Go ahead.
sicher? Du bist sicher, Spiegelberg?
Ja, ich bin mir sicher.
Oh, okay. I thought it was funny that you said the first translation was for you, like to be tempted. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's Christian.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll go into the next one unless
It
anybody
sounded
wants
a
to
bit like tempers.
anything else to share about aphorism 42. If not, we'll go to 43. Oh, actually, one more thing in 42 where he mentions two things. The new philosophers love truths like all philosophers, but they won't be dogmatists. That's the only difference. It's how Nietzsche mentions elsewhere about you using convictions as a means. So you have these truths as these. It's true for this context, this scenario, but they're they're not tied to it. They're not married to the truth. Being like in a different situation where scenarios are different, or I come to understand new evidence or whatever, this is going to change the truth as I know it, and that's completely acceptable. They're not tied there to their convictions. That's the new philosophers. But they also love truths like all philosophers. So here it's interesting how Nietzsche doesn't think of truth as a negative, but it's useful, but just don't get married to the idea of something being a constant truth, an absolute truth, but more
Yeah,
like
it's the
changing.
strength of the conviction rather
Yeah.
than the actual being of the. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
being versus becoming. So
Yeah, that's more aphorism 43. And then one more thing he mentions in 43, which is good is not what is good for. And here makes a good point of like the common good makes no sense because if it's common, it has no value. All that is rare is for the rare.
right,
Which
later gets into the whole 260 when it gets into the whole, what's injurious for you is injurious, period, and to determine their own values are the creators of their own values. Boom. But that'll be 260 Beyond Good and Evil.
All right, that'll be a little while, but I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I mean the common good doesn't make any sense because if you look at the hierarchy of values, values always fall under a hierarchy. That just seems to be the case because you don't see everything as equally good. It falls into a hierarchy of what is more valuable to you. And so the term common good doesn't make any sense because if everybody has it, then it's not really worth much.
It's just mob then, It's,
Yeah.
if everybody, if dirt brown was such a fucking popular color,
Yeah.
royalty wouldn't wear purple.
Yeah. You want to be different in a way, right? You don't want the same as everybody else and call it the best because that doesn't make any sense. How could it be the best if everybody has it? Yeah. All right. Now, I think it's the last aphorism, which is the biggest one. Aphorism 44. There's a lot to go into this. Are you laughing just at the sheer length of the aphorism?
I'm sorry, I'm watching. I forgot to mute me
It's okay.
myself.
What? It's an
He's
honest
saying he was
forgot to
reaction.
watching
mute.
something, but he forgot to
I
mute
forgot to
himself.
mute myself. I was reading something,
You
and it's not Nietzsche.
okay? Anyway, okay. Let me see one thing. All right. So, yeah. Uh, what I got out of it is that the will gets more powerful with time as the opposite of what is good for its growth happens. We scare others away as a necessity because we're jealous of our own solitude. Yeah, those are some of the ideas I got. I got more to share, but let's actually dig into some of those as well.
For
Let's
sure.
see. I mean, the first part of the aphorism he talks about America, democracy, and uh, you know, basically the idea of America, which is democracy, and calling themselves free while going after security, rights, and freedom from suffering. So, you know, which is kind of, you can kind of see it in real time, which is that um, we're becoming more and more intolerant of people who are politically quote unquote incorrect, and what is considered politically incorrect definition of that is expanding, and you're still calling it free, but as the definition of what is correct expands, you're becoming less free at the same time. So
Right. I mean, I guess this also plays into the whole discipline thing. It's like, because it's like you're not looking to be free, like freedom from what? You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, like we would be
like,
free
are
in
you
the
going to be
same
free
term of
from all, like, it's like, how can you really be free from a whole bunch of, like, what is freedom anyways? It's like, I don't know, it's just kind of like a vague term, because it's like, what can we really be free from, you know? Like, that's why Nietzsche doesn't even like the whole of freedom. It's like a whole, it's rather strong and weak wills, you know? It's like,
free from what, like you said. Yeah, another thing where he talks about is as I mentioned, the will gets more powerful time as the opposite of what is good for its growth happens. Let's see. Dangerousness of this. It's interesting how what makes the will stronger, the spirit stronger, is kind of what is the opposite of what people generally think of as good.
well, like with his conditions-based science, you know, he was like so physically incapable at that time. Like, he just turned to the most profound form of yay saying that he could, you know, to like give himself, you know, just the fucking that was his whole discipline with amor fati and whatnot, you know what I mean? It was just like, but it's like the more you fall, the more you have to climb out of, and it's like, if you actually make that climb out of that lower wherever, you know,
Rock
you're
bottom,
now
essentially.
in
Yeah.
vigor. Yeah, exactly. You're now stronger for it because you've overcome all of that shit, and it's like, you know, just on to bigger and better
Considering
things now.
What did you say?
consider that considering that he says that these list of traits that he lists out, um, that everything wicked, terrible, tyrannical. I'm reading a different version, so sorry if it's slightly different.
It's
That
fine.
everything wicked, terrible, tyrannical, predatory, and serpentine in man serves as well for the elevation of the human species as its opposite. We do not say enough when we only say this much. Like basically that he's saying that there's an onus to be said about perhaps like there's maybe a strong-willed commoner, a strong-willed worker, but there also might be a weak-willed like philosopher or elitist or like something like that. That let's say that severity and violence and slavery and danger in the street might be good for someone that serves at the bottom of the pyramid. And this kind of is where like he kind of scolds socialists for undermining the working instinct of working souls. But that similarly, to find someone that's say an Arbeiter, a worker, that serves well, does well under weak conditions to actually have like those conditions where he seemingly feels like a green pasture happiness, like this work of socialism to get like universal basic income or something like that. I'm not saying that Nietzsche would advocate for it or that I'm advocating for it, but the inclination that for some people who aren't as strong of will, that are just weak-willed, certainly probably are more often than not of a more like base caste, but like that it probably would make them more successful at doing what they're inclined to do in that class if they had the conditions that like served their weak will and didn't undermine their instincts towards that. And then again, contrary wise, if you understood that like someone was strong willed, like you might know that they would be a better manager, say, or something like that. Again, I'm kind of botching my understandings of Nietzsche at this point to make guesses here.
No, not
but
really,
I think it was interesting that
there's a fragment, I can't remember which one it is, what year it is, but he literally discusses this aspect. He says, it's better for those who thrive in compulsion to remain in that state, like, oh, to be told what to do, or you know what I mean, or to be that, you know what I mean, like they'll eventually perhaps grow to the point of commanding, like their compulsion, perhaps. Maybe they won't, maybe they will, but it's one of those things that it's like, it's just better for them to remain within
like
that. You can't,
one thing
they can't pretend to be something that they're not,
Exactly. Like early on, I understood this when I used to be an actor. I really appreciated, for some weird reason, I couldn't explain it, and I still can't. But maybe that's just goes to show what my instincts are. Like I couldn't explain why I really enjoyed the idea of a supporting role as an actor, and that I had and there's an award for it in the Oscars, but like the best supporting role is given as an award, and that I was thinking like sometimes, because I was also in leadership at the time, like student leadership at my school, like that something that made my job as a leader when I needed to be a leader or do things that required leadership, that my job as a leader and my desire to be a student leader, because I really wanted to pursue like government at one point. Like my job became so much easier when I had like the most like industrious, studious, loyal like helper, like supporter that like worked under me. Like and that
oh yeah, dude, like
the person
that's
who
one
like
of the reasons why I
was
love
like
the
the
fucking
best.
military. Like it
That
was like the military trains for that kind of efficiency, you know what I mean? To have those kind of people underneath you and shit. So, and if they're not, then it's your fucking responsibility to train them up to that. You know what I mean? If you're in that position, but it's like, exactly
But
what
like
you're talking about.
that's I think when it's so funny that you can't always be a good worker, but like there's some people who like aren't the best workers unless like someone is like a leader than they are a follower, you know? Like
Right.
that's what I also found out is like whenever I faltered as someone that was a follower, I actually did a lot better. And people were kind of shocked. They're like, why are you doing this all the time? And then I would tell them is because like, well, it's because so and so or the idea I found out was so good at leading me. Like that I had Nietzsche's words. There was a bellwether or or a shepherd. These are two different things for Nietzsche. But that there was a good bellwether or shepherd that helped me towards that, and that where I was too weak to conjure that in myself, even if it was just as the role of a follower, that's what the purpose of their strategy is that if I don't manifest it and help them leave, they manifest it and help me follow.
Yeah. I mean, it's that whole saying of like, if you don't figure out what you need to do in life, somebody else will just make you part of their plan. You know, like they will use you for whatever strength. And in a way, the higher types are creative people in terms that they look at the masses and think of like, in what creative ways can I use them for my own goals? And that is kind of, you become part of somebody else's plan. And sometimes it aligns with you and it's fulfilling and meaningful and whatnot when it aligns, but other times it might not. And you
Yeah.
kind of grow resentful, but you have to do it because you need food on the table or X.
Which we'll get into the next one, kind of, but also and BG 200, he talks about how, you know, the greatest types are complementary to the same cause as the masses. It's like
Interesting.
the masses
200?
come to the forefront. Yeah, they come to the forefront and they find repose within the higher types of values, and that's what really makes the great person in general, is because you now have the whole force of the society propelling, like, now dominated underneath. It's like the dominant force is the great person,
Mhm.
and it's like you now just have all these this multiplicity of forces underneath you that are now just,
Yeah, yeah.
they're being dominated by you, and they're just added to your quanta of power, basically.
Hmm. And that's what,
Which
you know,
Nietzsche gets into quite specifically in Will to Power, like in like the later 500s to 700 range. It's
hmm,
actually that I've been going through that section like multiple times recently. It's just been fucking baller every time I do it. I highly suggest
nice.
that area in Will to Power.
Um, yeah. Let's see. And yeah, the end of this aphorism is basically Nietzsche saying that someone who's a free thinker um, has had many different perspectives regarding philosophical truth, um, and they have learned to disregard the prizes of the world, grateful to the suffering because it helps their path, open to learn most the dreadful parts of life, boundless explorers, endlessly conquering, learning and forgetting. Yeah, so it's just kind of descriptive in terms of what these new philosophers are going to be like. Um, yeah, then the bottom over here. Um, investigators to the point of cruelty. There's a lot. Stomach for the indigestible. Yeah. Yeah, but that basically sums up what he thinks the new philosophers are going to be like jealous friends of solitude.
Yeah, because it's like, well, like Schopenhauer said, it was like, what was it? Something about like just the noise of, or something about like a profound mind needs quiet or some shit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what he says about it, but it's like some funny actually makes it like, I don't know. It's like
I
a
think I've
diss
heard
that he
that. If you
makes,
get,
but I can't remember what the diss is though. But it's like some
Yeah,
funny
I
diss he
remember it
makes.
too.
But I don't know.
Yeah, he talks a lot about these type of things. That the quiet minds able to produce intellectually is more productive or something.
Right. And Nietzsche talks about that too. Like he believes in that same aspect. So because like there's at some point in Ecce Homo, he's, I think, why I write such great books, and he's talking about I leave all distractions out of my reach. You know, not even a book from another person is around me while I'm writing my works. You know, like it's just all fucking me. No books from anybody else, just my notes, me. No other person, no other, you know, no woman, no one for sex, no this, that, all, you know, just me.
yeah, something to be said about solitude. And isn't there
Also
Nietzsche?
goes into the thing before about I can't remember. We were just talking about the need for independence, not being like dependent upon other people. That whole, you know, need for solitude is that whole not being dependent upon other people type of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else to add about it? We can always continue in book discussions as well, as always.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much beating it with a dead horse. We can
Yeah,
continue,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah, no, I'll put
yeah,
it in book discussion later, but like just talk about free thinkers, and that would be it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
well,
it's
no, I
an
mean if you want to
interesting.
talk about it here now, that's fine. I was just,
Yeah, you can share it. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I think it was only because the last time we talked about Beyond Good and Evil, Stark, I always beat this point whenever I come across this passage that people in modern times nowadays they tend to, if not conflate,
Ah,
misunderstand this idea of what a free spirit is, and that oftentimes liberal individualism or even like libertarian views of free will or this idea of like equality of rights, like you can go to the right of center or the left of center and there's equal confusions for different reasons about this idea of what it is to be free or a free spirit, and that Nietzsche tries his best, however young he is, like, but even in later works and his notes, like he doesn't get much of a better like dissemination of trying to delineate what he means by free spirit and not. But like he's like saying that these people that actually we had like the free thinkers movement in the United States, for example, and these people were exactly what Nietzsche is talking about. That
Yeah.
there's a difference from what I'm saying with free spirit than what
Yeah.
these people that ask for equality of rights or like a libertarian view of free will are asking for.
Yeah, I mean free thinkers are more like the whole laissez aller ni maître or ni maître or ni deo ni maître or something like that. You know, no gods, no masters. Like they want to
Hmm?
they want it's like what freedom from what though? It's like
Yeah,
what exactly are you
yeah,
freed
exactly.
from, you know? So
I
Yeah.
mean, he
So
goes
like in
into
another
this.
place instead of less, huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Another place out of laissez aller, he does actually say laissez faire, with the same critical bite. And yet, laissez faire capitalism is like the jouissance of today's economic views. However you want to criticize it or laud it, that it's like it's something that like is also like asked for and demanded when people ask for universal basic income. It's like I need the laissez faire, the laissez aller of being able to kick my feet up wherever the fuck I want, and have to be free from the chains that I'm like talking about. Whether it's taxes or the man. It's just ridiculous to me.
Yeah. I mean, this whole paragraph is about that. He talks about these falsely so-called free spirits, scribbling slaves of democratic taste and its modern ideas. Human
that's
beings
why I
without
love
solitude.
188 so much, man, because it goes into that so much more. Like we're gonna get to that.
He beats the heck out of democracy. It's hilarious.
Because he literally
Yeah.
starts, in contrast to the laissez aller, every system or morals is a sort of tyranny against nature, and also against reason. That is, however, no objection, unless one should again decree by some system of morals that all kinds of tyranny and unreasonableness are unlawful. So it's like, in a way, you like, if you it's going to take a system of morals, a tyranny of some kind, to decree that, all tyrannies are unreasonable and unlawful. So by that, it's like kind of self-defeating. And he's kind of getting
Mhm.
right there with how the laissez aller just makes no fucking sense. Because it's a
Yeah.
tyranny freedom, but that it's, you know what I mean? Freedom, like what?
That we don't really think through our ideas. That's the problem with modern day. Like, yeah. Yeah. It's what is it? He kind of says it's a way of standing truth happily on her head. Yeah. Quite the writer. Anything more to add? Because that'll be the end of part 2. And then I'll set the
Nope.
meeting soon enough for part 3. All good? Yeah. We can
Wrapping up here.
share. Yeah, wrap it up and we can share more. Would love to, read more into it and delve even deeper to some of the things that came up.
We're already done. That was like short. I thought we
I'm
were
surprised.
like.
I really
I
thought
thought we
that.
like, or we'd take like at least entire evening for like 3 aphorisms. But here we are.
I honestly thought that there would be another session that we would have had to do. Because I came
Yeah.
in thinking, yeah, we would have to
Well,
have
sometimes if we had like double the amount of people, if
yeah,
there was
then there's more
here,
people
then it's
discussing
generally,
it. Yeah, that's true.
then it's
It
like
having
more,
changes.
like
more people.
a rough time keeping up sometimes. Like I hear the word Schopenhauer, and I'm all conscious and attentive, but I'm missing sometimes the context to say anything.
I feel you.
We were just talking about Schopenhauer's views on solitude and how they they do align with Nietzsche's thoughts
I
about
think they're
solitude
very
as well.
similar.
Yeah.
I think they're identical even. Schopenhauer has like a great deal of talking about romanticizing intellectualism in being alone and reading a good amount of world literature.
Hmm.
I think that's also a thing Nietzsche like kind of
Yeah.
needs
Oh, where was
writing.
Really recovers.
What?
Wait, one thought at a time. Sorry. One
I
of
just
you
wanted to
guys
know where
speak.
Schopenhauer was from.
It's from Germany. It's from Danzig. Nowadays,
From
Poland.
Danzig?
Yeah, it's a Prussian city. Um,
Oh,
he's a German. He's very German. Like, he's typical Northern German type of philosopher.
I really need to
really?
go to Germany.
I thought I'd
Uh,
call him instead of the Chinaman of Königsberg. I should call him the Chinaman of Danzig. He seems like a Chinaman.
yeah. What?
They call
A
Kant
Ge-
Immanuel Kant.
yeah,
That calls him, and other people call him the Chinaman of Königsberg.
the
Maybe
German.
pro- hmm.
Like I know this joke about Kant, where people just say the man aus Königsberg, the man from Königsberg, meaning he's like the he never left Königsberg, but that doesn't count for Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer is like I think more associated with Frankfurt. That's like his its main residency. Like you compare he affiliate with him.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I couldn't really understand the word you were trying to say.
It's okay. So Nietzsche makes this joke about Kant being the Chinaman, like from China, like the
The
Chinaman of Königsberg.
Chinaman. Understandable. The Chinaman. Yeah. That could be
Yeah,
true. Yeah.
it just sounds like the way Schopenhauer thought we should call Schopenhauer the Chinaman of Danzig.
Yeah, or Frankfurt would even be better. I think that would be very fun. Schopenhauer and he was a hermit, just like Kant. Kant had a lot of visitors, though. So Kant was like somewhat of less of a Chinaman than Schopenhauer, because Schopenhauer he used to travel a lot, in contrary to Kant, who never traveled anywhere, but didn't meet anyone. He was like a hermit. He had like he most definitely didn't have any visitors. I'm not sure about Nietzsche though, if Nietzsche had any visitors. I don't think so.
He traveled a lot of and had a lot of friends, but he was very much someone who would be at parties and he would say that he got a fateful telegram and would have to leave just because he just didn't like being around like too many people. He liked one-on-one. He liked hanging out with people one-on-one. So if he had a visitor, it would be one of his friends or like the Wagner and his wife. But he didn't like parties.
Yeah, that's as far as I know Nietzsche as well. He suffered also a lot from loneliness, I
Right.
think.
Thank you, guys. I have to go. But it's been good.
All right, we'll call it then, and yeah, we'll continue on.
Bye.
Bye.